Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our final team preview for this off season. I'm Proilios, and I'm joined as usual by my co host Nightwing. And this is our preview of the Chengdu Hunters going into season 5 of the Overwatch League. Now, we have to acknowledge that the Chengdu Hunters are in flux right now. The team is undergoing some changes on the management and the player side, which we aren't being made aware of just yet publicly. So you have to take all of our analyses with a grain of salt or several grains of salt. Um, we are still doing this preview right now, even without having information, since the league is not far off. And we also at least want to get our thoughts on all of these players out there, just so our final power rankings make sense whenever we do them. So, alright, let's start things off with the tank of the Chengdu Hunters, which is Gaga. Now, Gaga is a really flexible main tank player, as we all know, and he was known to be a really good playmaker and just a consistent presence all in all. And he did impress us with his wrecking ball. He played a really coordinated style of ball, going for backlines, communicating with Leave, who was on the Tracer or the Echo, and just assassinating people. So his ball was really good. Naturally, it translated to his Winston play as well, which wasn't exceptional, but you could see he was doing the right things. He didn't get to show us a lot of Orisa and Reinhardt, but that's fine. I just totally trust him because I have seen him play those two tanks in contenders as well. So I think all in all, Gaga is probably one of the strongest tanks in general going into Overwatch 2 because he is mechanically skilled. He is really consistent, and he seems to be able to adjust to different playstyles on different tanks throughout different metas. So I think he could be one who could pick up off tanks really well for the team.
I think definitely because of his skill on the ball, which is obviously a hero that also requires a mechanical skill alongside that, uh, like positioning sense. Obviously, I think that does indicate that Gaga should be able to, flex onto um, the heroes required for him in Overwatch 2. That said, I mean, he hasn't actually shown a lot of flexibility in his own main role outside of Winston, I feel. Obviously, the APAC region has always preferred these ball and Winston comps, favoring dive over rush comps. That said, that still doesn't excuse the fact that, like, the entirety of last year, you didn't really see a lot of exceptional Rhino or Rissa play from Gaga. I think for me personally, that's a little bit of a question mark uh, in terms of how strong he will be on those roles, and going into obviously the rework to Rissa and the addition of the off tanks obviously as well in the hero pool, because it's not like he has a backup like who can play the traditionally off tank heroes either, right? So you're really counting on Gaga and putting all your eggs into this one basket for now if you're Chengdu. So I think that may be a little bit risky for them. Uh, I think when it comes to ball play, though, he will be one of the better players. I think like top three or top five at worst. And I think yeah, he's a good tank to have in Overwatch too, even if I'm not super confident in his flexibility entirely.
hmm And I think let's move on to the damage line of this team, which is quite interesting, I must say. Let's kick things off with talking about Jinmu and Leave, who were a very stable damage line for this team last year and saw a lot of success. What in general do you think about this pairing, Nightwing? Do you think they are flexible enough to survive the many metas coming forward in Overwatch 2? And also, do you think they can perform consistently with all these new heroes coming up?
I think Leave and Jinmu on their own are probably not enough, and that's why it's good that they've signed Apr1ta. Um, but I think looking at Leave, obviously he played an exceptional game every single game last year, and that's why obviously he was named the MVP. Uh, he showed good flexibility. He showed exceptional results on the Echo and Tracer, especially. But also, whenever he would swap off to these other heroes, you could see that he was clearly the best player on the team and often the best player in the lobby, even outside of the matches against Shanghai. And I think Leave's great performances should continue. Uh, because he's got that very, very wide hero pool, and he's excellent at basically every hero that he wants to pick up. I think Jinmu, on the other hand, I think while he did play well, I think Jinmu still has that tendency to become that silly hero specialist at times. I think sometimes because of Jinmu's weird hero pool, where he does actually swap two particular heroes, but it doesn't seem to work out very well for him sometimes. Then he defaults back to the his old classic picks, and that's where he usually prospers. Uh, I think in that sense, Jinmu sometimes is a limiting factor for this team, even going into this season. I think he did like improve in that regard last year a bit compared to previous seasons. That said, I think it is a factor that still sort of limits the Chengdu Hunters, I think, and that's why I think Apr1ta is a really good addition for them, because I think that way you just have more bases covered as a DPS line. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I think Apr1ta coming in is a really amazing signing by the Hunters because, as we all know, he's done some remarkable things with Team Chaser. Just won multiple tournaments and contenders with them. He's also been very consistent throughout his entire career in Tier 2. You can see that he has won like really good accolades even with Flag Gaming when Flag Gaming was really not a uh, well respected team, but Apr1ta was one of the few players that turned things around for them. And naturally, with Team Chaser, who is Chengdu Hunters Academy team, they've just done wonders. So I think them promoting him is no surprise at all, and just a fantastic move. And this enables them to play in those double hit scan metas, which I think are coming up alongside Leave, who naturally Leave is a MVP from last year because he's one of the best hyperflexes out there, and there aren't a lot of hyperflexes out there in the first place. And last year, Leave just overshadowed all of them. I think like the only player that came close to him was Sparkle, really, and just an overall like completely dominant threat on the battlefield. No matter which hero he's playing, you could see him playing Franco heroes like Tracer and Sombra really well. You can see him playing projectile heroes like Echo and Hanzo extremely well. His Ash and even his Gas are just amazing. So I think if there's any meta, you 100% won't leave playing in it. And like you said, Nightwing, Jinmu does become sort of a limiting factor because the heroes that he's known to play, like the Genji and the Pharah, maybe even the Hanzo to some extent, they are rarely ever meta. And I may be just talking about the Overwatch 1 context here, but from what I've heard, none of these heroes are really meta right now anyway. Even in the Overwatch 2's early development stages. So I think Jinmu's going to continue being a niche player. Um it's probably going to be Leave in all the time alongside Apr1ta, who's going to play the hit scan with Leave playing the projectile roles, and then Jinmu will come in for those Genjis and those Pharahs, and I think that's his kind of comfort zone. If you put Jinmu on heroes like the Sombra, uh, I think it like he just tried really hard to play the Sombra, especially last year, and he played quite a lot of her, but you just can't see him getting that finesse, even though he spent almost 2 years playing that hero a lot. So I think he's got a very clear comfort zone, and it would benefit the team to just keep him there and just utilize Leave and Apr1ta in the meantime, because those two will form one of the best DPS duos in the league, I would argue. And yeah, those are my thoughts on the DPS line in general. Should we move on to the supports, Nightwing?
Yeah, I think we've generally covered the DPS line. I think in terms of it being one of the best DPS lines in general, I think that's still a little bit hard to say. I think many teams that are not even that good also have like fairly solid DPS lines. So I think depending on who actually finds the best success in Overwatch 2, it might not be immediately obvious that, Leave and Apr1ta actually form a very, very strong DPS duo that's better than most others. Uh, and yeah, Jinmu's Sombra point, I definitely agree. I think at some points you would almost find his Sombra worse than Perdring's, and as like heretical as that might seem to seem to be. So yeah, I think that's enough for the DPS line. I think we can move on to the support line.
All right then. Let's start off by talking about the main supports that this team has, which are Yveltal and Nisha. Now, I must say that I do really like Yveltal just for his flexibility, because he plays the battle mercy that we all aim to be. He also plays a really aggressive Lucio, even though his Lucio mechanics aren't the best, and naturally doesn't have to play a lot of him because this team doesn't play a lot of rush. But he turned out to be a really good brig as well last year. And all in all, I think his veteran experience and just his kind of aggression just fits the team style really well. That said, I think Yveltal needs to buck up on his Lucio because, as we've heard, the Lucio pick comes in quite handy in Overwatch 2 because there's lesser peel, with naturally one tank out of the picture, and the main supports need to be better at peeling for the flex supports. So I think that's what kind of nerfs Yveltal a little bit because we've also been hearing Lucio being part of the new meta for Overwatch 2. And they've also got Nisha, who I think, all in all, is a, a less well rounded player, but he plays those heroes at like slightly at a higher level than Yveltal on most occasions, in my opinion. Like his Mercy and Brig as well, which are what Yveltal plays as well, are really good. And that's why he was sharing a lot of significant playtime last year with him. So I think this is in general a good support line to have. I think you can um, have a lot of interesting main support choices based on the kind of playstyle you want, the kind of heroes you're expecting to field them on, and just the experience level of the team they're playing against. So I think it's good to have two main supports here, and I'll get your thoughts on this, Nightwing, before we talk about the flexes.
Yeah, sure. So Yveltal is obviously like really well known for his mercy, and he has good flexibility in terms of picking up other main supports. But in terms of the Lucio, I think Nisha is definitely superior. I think, and that's why you've seen that Nisha is signed as like a full time player, whereas Yveltal is apparently signed as a two-way alongside Team Chaser. So he'll only see a little bit of play time. You won't be put in all of the time, and Nisha will be like the mainstay, main support, as far as I can tell. So, keeping that in mind, I think you really have to look at what Nisha can provide to the table because he should be on a month by month basis and a game by game basis. You should be seeing Nisha more often just because of contractual requirements.
Hmm. And
And
yeah.
that's why I think Nisha is solid. I think he's not achieved any sort of legendary status yet. But that said, I think he should be like just very, very possible. And I think just having the fact that you've got these main supports at all puts you at an advantage compared to some other teams that are hedged in on that only flex support bet, right? So in that sense, they should be like in a better spot compared to many other teams that have just gone probably the wrong way. Uh, Considering the whole Lucio meta rush that's been reported for Overwatch 2.
Hmm. All right, then I think let me kick us off on the flex supports now, which are Monk and Farway. Now, we did see Monk getting a lot of playtime last year, with Farway coming out as a more situational player. Um, Monk was, in general, a really impressive Ana player, and he also played a surprisingly good Zen. Like, I was not at all expecting that from Monk, and I think he suits the team style really well again because he is someone that can put a ton of resources into his teammates. He's a low resource player himself. His positioning uh, is really good, so he doesn't require peeling very often. And Farway is naturally there to complement him. Naturally, Farway is a more aggressive player, known for his Zen, which I still think is better than Monk's. And Farwe also plays a really good BAP. So having him in on the Zen and the BAP and Mmonk on the Ana and the Moira make a ton of sense to me. So all in all, I think this flex support line is actually really cracked. I think last year Chengdu utilized their flex supports really well, and they were often some of the highlight players of the team. In addition to Leave, of course. So I think they're in a great position with in that department.
Yeah, I think in terms of just the heroes are assigned to them, personally, I feel like Monk just had better showings on the BAP last year. I think I would probably give the Ana and the Zen to Faraway, and then Moira and what's the other hero? Moira and BAP to Monk. I think that said, I think both are incredibly solid. I think Monk just got more playtime last year, uh, generally speaking, and that made him just look, I think, better because he had more opportunities. That said, yeah, I think it's a good, flex support line to have. I think they can probably compete with just about any double flex support like lineup out there, and that's why I think that they're like in a really good position compared to many other teams in the flex support role. I think if you go into like a Lucia Moira meta, obviously, uh, there's not a lot of flex support talent that you really require, considering the fact that, like Moira gameplay, yes, you can have some standout players such as Fielder, like you saw in the Neo Goats slash Dupligoats meta last year, where Fielder did actually outperform basically every other Moira. That said, I think the flex support talent will really start to show in the further metas that come after this particular balance change, and that's when I think you can see these flex supports really shine. I think until then, it's just going to be about looking at you know how the main support players perform, how they coordinate rotations with the main tank, or just I guess the tank, how they work around the brawl comps, and when needed, how do they swap off to other comps? How do they go to the dive? How do they go to, I guess, not the bunker, but whatever you'd call the compo to resign it. I guess that would be a form of brawl as well now, considering how in your face she gets. So, considering all of that, I think like they are like in a really good situation just to like handle basically every meta that's thrown at them from a support line perspective. I think the looking at the roster as a whole, the tank line definitely does need someone to just take off the pressure from Gaga. I think when you saw Belrossi signed for Philly Fusion recently, there were some people that were complaining that this implies that Fury does not have the talent to play every tank. But you have to understand that like these players have dedicated their entire careers playing like a few select heroes, and so doubling that requirement for them and expecting the same performance is just not very viable. You will see a dip in play if you don't actually sign a specialist for at least some set of heroes, right? And I think that's why, as a whole, the Chengdu Hunters will probably just struggle in figuring out what comps work for them and what comps don't, because uh, sometimes comps can be really busted, especially going into a new game. And I think that's where I think the fact that Gaga is the only tank is really going to negatively affect them. So apart from that, I think the DPS are in a good spot, and the support line is also in a really good spot. So they should be able to just sort of make do in most metas outside of the small tank line problem.
Hmm.
So I think with that, we can also talk about the coaching staff. And so they've got Creed, and I don't actually know how to pronounce this coach's name. I think it's Yaoxie.
Yashi,
Um,
I guess. Yashi.
yeah, it's like Yoshi from Mario, maybe. Um, So, yeah, do you want to take it away about these coaching staff, Proilios?
Yeah, sure. So I honestly don't have a lot to say about these coaches because, first of all, they're both assistant coaches. Because the team, I think, got rid of Rui during the off season, and now they don't have a head coach. So Yaoxie has been with the team since 2021 began. I mean, the season began, and naturally they've also got Creed sharing the role with him. And Creed has been around for since the beginning of the Overwatch League. Honestly, he has been part of many different teams from China. Like initially being with the Shanghai Dragons, then going on to the Guangzhou Charge, and joining the Chengdu Hunters last year. So he's seen a fair bit of different stuff. Um, I think with Creed, it's going to be really interesting because he's gotten to see a lot of Eastern Overwatch, you can say. He's gotten to see a lot of those dive comps and study them really well and then implement them along with Rui naturally last year and have a lot of success. And Yaoxie also was with the team last year, so these two guys have worked with each other. They probably understand each other's strengths and weaknesses and try and complement each other in some way. But naturally, I don't have any insider information on this. Uh, on the plus side, the whole team is Chinese, so it's just going to be a really interesting thing to see if they actually um, keep just these two head coaches or they sign a keep these two assistant coaches or just sign a new head coach, which naturally I think they should do. So it just remains to be seen, right? I honestly can't just put my faith into two assistant coaches. Like, how seriously would the players even take them if they don't have one person to take kind of the final orders from, so to speak? Um, yeah, I just don't really have any inside information on them, so I can't talk about how the players, uh, what the players think of them, how effective they think their coaching has been, and so on. Do you happen to know anything, Nightwing, or just have a general opinion of these guys?
So I think in terms of, I think I'll just offer my perspective on how this coaching will go in general. I think looking at these two assistant coaches, despite the lack of a head coach, they've got obviously some experience working with each other, like you said, because they were, on the same team since the off season of last year, and so they've had an entire season, and you could see that the Chengdu Hunters definitely, executed comps a lot better. They had just more of a clue of like how to execute meta and counter meta strategies compared to when they would just play just about whatever earlier on. So I think that is a merit that you can probably give to the assistant coaches because that's part of the assistant coach's role. I think is helping players improve individually as well as just work together in terms of executing strategies and metas. So that's something I can definitely give them merit for. I think, like you mentioned, they're all Chinese players, which I think is an important distinction to make. Because the Overwatch League has extended the duration of the Eastern region games by a couple of weeks, and why this is I think related to the fact that China has introduced a COVID-19 lockdown again, and so players are going to have to, as far as I understand, they're going to have to maybe play from home or go through some sort of lockdown strategy, and it is a tough situation to work around. That was more prevalent in 2020 than 2021, and that's why I think it's good that these people know each other. They know how to work with each other because it's hard to introduce yourself and like actually get going within an online environment if you don't already have some sort of rapport like created already. Uh, the fact that all these players are Chinese and the fact that some of them have that established synergy means that they should have an easier time still making this roster work, even if they have like a tougher logistical situation ahead of them. And so that's the insight that I can offer is that you know at least they're not complete strangers to each other, and they did actually show promise in terms of improving how the team played last year, and so that does give me some faith that the coaching staff will be able to actually help the Chengdu Hunters this year as well.
Yep, I really appreciate that level of explanation that you provided. It's really good. I think with the kind of conversation we've had, I think we've both developed a very positive outlook for the Hunters if they maintain this current roster. Because naturally they've got Gaga. who can flex onto every main tank. They do need an off-tank player in my opinion as well, but let's not get into that right now. They've also got three DPS players, two of whom are just absolutely elite, and Jinmu who can fill in for those silly heroes. And the support line is just really experienced and flexible, and really suits the team. I think this is one of the teams which has one of the most cohesive play styles, uh, like individually, naturally, that I've seen. Whoever's done the scouting for this roster in the past couple of years has just done a really good job. So shout out to them, whoever they are. And yeah, I think we can expect some great things from this team if they just maintain this roster. I don't know if they'll go for a championship or anything like that, but I think they'll still be really good. Any thoughts on this, Nightwing?
I think in terms of the APAC region, I would put them right below teams like the Shanghai Dragons, where I think Shanghai Dragons are definitely like a slight cut above still, but I think Chengdu Hunters can almost beat down on many of these other teams. Because if you look at a team like the Seoul Dynasty, right, they've just got a smaller roster. They've got slightly less flexibility, and they've still got that same, solo tank situation going on. So, in terms of if I would put, the Chengdu Hunters against the Seoul Dynasty, the Chengdu Hunters would probably come out on top because they've got that really good DPS line going. They've got flexibility and backups on the support role as well, and that gives me some good confidence in this team, even if the lack of a head coach and quote unquote off rank player is obviously still pervading. And that's why I think they should be a very, very solid team in the APAC region and will probably like get into playoffs uh, if their current situation continues and the rumors are actually proved to be false, uh, because there is a possibility that this team does fall apart and players do get signed elsewhere, but I don't really know uh, what to make of that sort of situation. So I think that's something that we can probably just talk about if or when it actually happens.
hmm And I really hope that the team sorts out whatever kind of logistics they need to sort out really fast, because the season is, I think, 10 days away, and they don't have a lot of time to put together a brand new roster. If they do, it's going to be a complete LA Valiant type of situation. Uh, Maybe slightly better since the players will probably still be from the Chinese region. But I'm sure that we all just want to see the Hunters get through this in one piece, or as few pieces as possible, I guess. And yeah, we wish them all the best. And on that note, we'll end this episode. Thanks a lot for listening. Uh, we've completed all our team previews, so we will be putting out our power rankings episode next, in the next few days. So you guys, please let us know what you think of the Chengdu Hunters, how you think they will do if they maintain this current roster, and just let us know if you'd like for us to cover anything else throughout the season as well, because otherwise we in general go for weekly episodes where we sum up what happened in the past week and any signings or team changes that might have happened. But if you guys have anything new for us to do, if you have any questions, we would also be happy to answer them. So let us know in the comments, and yeah, we'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.